I usually kind of keep my distance and stay in my own little world.
Mike, you just said glasses, Mike. I hope.
They were right in front of me.
Yeah.
You think you know an eye doctor?
Yeah, well.
You wearing those little cheater
Gross,
clothes?
you're so messed up, they didn't come back.
I'm ready.
I got the two fight each other, and it's a mess. You and
Not
Rachel.
according to me. I'm going to call this meeting to order. Let's say the Pledge of Allegiance and get started. Pledge
Allegiance to the flag
Flag.
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay. I know Mayor wants to do a oath of office for Brad, so let's go ahead and do that.
Thanks, Mike. Brad, come on down here.
Mr. Brad Johnson.
Okay, you raise your right hand. Repeat after me. I, Brad Johnson, do solemnly swear
I, Brad Johnson, do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Indiana,
and the Constitution of the State of Indiana,
and that I will faithfully,
and I will faithfully,
impartially,
impartially,
and diligently
and diligently
discharge my duties
discharge my duties,
as a member of the Redevelopment Commission
discharge my duties as a member of the Redevelopment Commission
for the City of Warsaw, Indiana,
for the City of Warsaw, Indiana,
according to the law
according to the law
and to the best of my
and
ability.
to the best of my ability.
Okay.
Thanks, Mike.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mayor. Let's have the minutes reflect we're missing two members today, Jack Wilhite and George Clemens. We do have a quorum. There are three of us here voting. Moving on, approval of the minutes. I'm assuming everyone has had an opportunity to read those minutes. Are there any comments or questions?
Make a motion to approve them as presented.
I'd like to make, I don't know if it's a major change, but on the election of officers, for me, it has down as being nominated as secretary, but then it says I was elected or unanimously approved as vice president. I don't want to take Mike's job.
You're welcome to.
Are you sure? That was the only thing. so.
I'm glad you caught that.
Yep. Okay. Duly noted. Thanks for catching it.
So I'd restate my motion to make a motion to make those corrections to the minutes as presented.
I'll second that. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you. All right, moving on. Jeremy, I'm going to turn this over to you for new business.
Oh, yes, the first thing on our agenda is an agreement with Kedco for Peak Med. So basically, we have agreed to provide workspace to Peak Medical. And they are using Kedco's kind of shared co-working space, their shared space in their facility. And the fee is $300 a month. So we've agreed to pay for their fee for a year under this agreement. Peak Med is a software company that does surgery planning, creates surgery planning software, and they are trying to open an office up in America. And so they'll start off with someone who's basically operating out of Kedco to get a staff, and then hopefully, as they successfully do that, they will move out into their own space. So our incentive for them is to cover their cost for the Kedco space while they're there.
I think it's interesting to note that this company is coming to the United States, to the orthopedic capital of the world, from Portugal.
Yes.
Jeremy, with the types of jobs in industry that plug and play, the med tech accelerator, this is exactly what they're looking at in the med tech space. So I know we talked previously about providing the space for this group to get started, and I'm certainly for it. So I'd make a motion to approve. It looks to me, I read through this, it's the $300 a month, so it gives him a dedicated space
Yep.
in full access, 24/7. So I make that motion.
Motion's been made. I'll second that. Any comment? Discussion? Questions? Okay. All in favor, please signify by saying aye to approve this.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, Jeremy, we're in for a year.
So the second item is for 2525, the affordable housing project that we're working on. I put down as discussion. I'm not necessarily recommending we approve anything at this point, but this was brought up to me on Thursday, and so I wanted to get it in your hands, have some discussion, whether we do anything about that today or we come back and visit it later. I'll leave that up to you. But in general, with the ongoing environmental, I won't say issues, but with the ongoing environmental solutions we need to provide for the affordable housing project, there's been some additional cost. This covers some of those additional costs, and that there's roughly what looks to be about 90-some thousand of additional environmental cost to this project. They are over budget and are basically asking if we would help with any of these costs, so I'm throwing it back to you to direct me one way or the other. Right now, the proposal you have is what's been given to them that they have to do regardless of whether or not we help or not. So the issue is centers around the ground contamination that creates potential vapors, and those potential vapors have to be monitored and drawn out of the ground and released into the air safely. And this is part of that solution, along with the injections that they're doing. So some of that is being covered by the EPA grant that was filtered down through us through the state, that the state's controlling, and that's the in-ground injections that they're doing. The other part of that is the monitoring. Since there's now buildings on that site, they have to monitor the air within inside the buildings to make sure that they're within the tolerances according to the EPA, and that costs money, and that cost was unknown to them at the time, and now roughly what they're looking at is potentially up to $90,986. If you look through this proposal, I think there's an actual construction proposal in here of what needs to be done structurally, which is the vents, $41,611, and then the remainder of that difference would be the ongoing testing to monitor that air as it's being released.
Jeremy, when that project started, we knew there were environmental concerns. That was the whole idea was to create a site to overcome those environmental concerns, and we had great support from MACOG and the developer and the city. We've all put our heads together, and it's a big success story. My question is, I know that the soil contamination was part of the identified problem early on. Was this venting solution, this looks to me to be what the extra cost is for, was that just something that was anticipated, but maybe not to the degree that once they got done they needed?
I don't think it was anticipated. I think the thought was they did the in-ground piping, they did the injections, they have a release that's not in a building, but they're not, I won't say that they're not achieving what they want, but they're not achieving completely what they want, which then is now requiring some additional safety factors to be included, which is part of what this is creating an event inside this, in the building that takes the air and pushes it out of the building and then allows them to sample that air to make sure that it's meeting the tolerances. So I think it's a mixed bag. I think some of it is unknown, we're unknown. Some of it is, even though we're doing the injections and may have felt comfortable with what was on site, there may be some stuff coming from off-site that could flow through the site, which are still creating challenges. A matter of fact, we're talking with the state right now on what we can do to maybe monitor or go after identifying what issues might be off-site that might be coming on-site. But that would take getting permission from other property owners and doing some testing on their property to identify some other potential contaminants that could be dealt with. So some of it's unknown, some of it I think they knew, and maybe it's not being as successful as they maybe had hoped it would have been with the injections.
So what you just suggested is the environmental assessment that we originally had done that MACOG got us the grant for was on-site, and now you're suggesting there may be off-site that's flowing into,
That's what they're suggesting.
okay?
I don't know, but based on the testing and what they're saying is now they want to look at some other properties that are off-site for what might be contributing to the issues on this site.
Who's they?
IDEM.
Okay.
So I have, I'm trying to set up a meeting with Lori Babinger, who is the one that helped us with this project and getting the EPA funds next week to discuss identifying what we could come up with off-site. And I don't know what those conversations are because we haven't had them.
Yep.
But that's kind of where we've gotten to as we've gone around with this project is we may need to look at some of the properties off-site and see what the issues might be. It may be a bigger solution to this site's problems. It'd be addressing or maybe looking for some potential funds to go after some other off-site cleanup.
So the installation of the system, the venting system, is about roughly half the cost, and the
Yes.
rest of it is inspection
Testing.
of the equipment, or is this annual inspection of the remediation?
Both. It'll be probably inspecting, making sure that it's working, and then also capturing the air and testing that air to make sure it's meeting the requirements.
So then would these inspection costs be ongoing?
Yes.
Beyond a year? So this may
Potentially.
not be all we're looking at.
That's, yeah, this is what we've been presented to so far.
Okay.
And it has that 90,986 has a 10% contingency because of that. So what they're saying is roughly 82,714 is what they're estimating as probable, but 90,986 is what they're requesting to allow for additional sampling as needed.
But these levels that they're finding, that they're feeling now they need to vent, it's not jeopardizing occupancy of the units, is it?
It is not.
Okay,
As of right now, that is not the case now.
okay.
To piggyback off that, if it's not jeopardizing occupancy of the units, why does it need to be done?
Well, this will allow the units to be occupied.
Okay.
It's basically a system that's going to take the air, bad air, right, and take it out. It'll allow them to sample that air to continue to see if it needs to be operated. That goes back to that was one of the questions I'd asked, and I don't know that we've gotten an answer is, let's say they install this system, and then a year from now, the air doesn't test anything, and it's clean, so you've installed this system that you can basically shut down and don't need to operate anymore. And I think the answer is, yes, but you still need to install the system to get to the point where you can shut the system down. Does that make sense?
And all this is being mandated by IDEM.
Yes. Based off of the numbers, the testing that they're doing.
Is there any federal grant money available to us
That was
or
the question,
developer?
that was the question that we've posed, and the answer we've gotten so far is no. So this is kind of, they're eating it at this point and they're asking if we would help.
Originally, we had an EPA grant.
Yeah, and that
through-
grant
Through MACOG.
That
And that's a
grant-
federal grant.
can't cover this from my understanding. So it's covering other things, but it can't cover this.
That was environmental assessment, and this is the
Well,
remediation.
so the MACOG stuff was assessment. The EPA money was remediation, and they did, that. You know, that's all the piping in the ground, the testing that's ongoing. I'm a little confused of why it can't be, but basically they're saying it can't be used for this. So the answer we've gotten so far, and MACOG has used its funding. Now they're going after another tranche of funding, but we don't know if they'll get it or when it will be available at this point. And that would be, could be a potential, a combination of both assessment and some remediation, but
So Jeremy, this SES Environmental, they were hired by Real America, correct? The city did not engage them. Is that correct? Or,
yes and no. So they were hired by Real America to do all of this, but they were already on site doing the stuff for the EPA. So that's kind of why they have used them, because
Yeah,
they're
they
already
were already
on
there.
site. And so they did some of the stuff that we were associated with when we were doing the cleanup, when we were demoing, because they were already on site doing this. So we have paid them and used them as part of our project, and the state's paid them and used them as part of their project, and now the contractor's paying, because they were already on site and knew everything associated with it.
so to clarify again, you know, this is listed as a proposal for environmental consulting and field services, which means that the construction as well as the
Yes.
environmental services. Okay. And they're being performed by SES, correct?
The environmental portion is being performed by SES, and they would contract with SCS for the installing the vents. That's in the contract. If I can find it. That was the 41,000. So they will not be installing because they do environmental work, but this SCS that they're contracting with would install the.
So the question is ultimately, who's responsible for the mitigation of the environmental concern? And I assume it's Real America. And
Yeah, I
they-
mean, if we did nothing, they would have to pay for
Right.
it because it's
So they're
their
asking
buildings.
for our assistance, but they are the ones that are mitigating the environmental problem
Yes,
with federal grants and maybe now with some money from Redevelopment Commission.
yeah, so SCS would be the company that would be installing the systems. Contracted through SCS, so the whole contract will be with SCS, but they'll be contracting with the other company to install the vents. But yeah, if we do nothing, they would just have to,
Jeremy, we have contributed in different ways to this project.
yes.
Okay? And something like this, I think, given where we're at, what our investment is, the fact that the occupancy is really, when are they looking at getting in? Is it
Couple of
contingent on this
months.
being done?
Well, it is, but a couple of months. They have to do this they're gonna do it.
Yeah.
They're just basically saying, we've already paid all these additional costs because of a lot of issues with the site, which it is a very complicated site. We knew that going into it. And so this is just one more of those costs that they had to face. You'll see in one of our claims, we have agreed to, so as when they were doing some of their underground work, they ran into an old steam pipe that was coming from that building that had asbestos. I did commit to paying to that cost, because had we hit it when we did the demolition, we would have removed it. It just so happens we didn't, and they did when they started their building, so we are committed to paying for the removal of that pipe and the asbestos associated with that pipe, and that was $3,438.95. So I did tell them to send me that bill. That was also SES that did that removal. So yeah, there's been a lot of costs with this site, a lot of them associated with the environmental work, but they are hoping to start pre-leasing, I think, in the next month and a half.
I'd like for you to continue your thought, though. You were gonna come to a conclusion there?
Well, no, I mean, this is a very unique project. We have a lot of cooperation with federal grants. MACOG was a big part of this. This project was a poster child for the environmental grants that MACOG gives out to other communities for just such projects, i.e. environmental sites that are now being mitigated and used for housing and/or back on the tax rolls. So the quality of the type of project that's being proposed, from my experience, we've always been involved in these housing projects in some way, as we should be. And it sounds to me like this amount is not, my only concern is what's next. And I would be willing to keep this going. I think this makes sense to continue this project to occupancy. We're that close. But I would take each of these requests one at a time. Is that a good way to say it? So, I feel like this is important that we support this project, given what Real America has invested in our community and the number. How many units is that, Jeremy?
60.
Yeah. So,
What is their investment cost? Do we know?
I know that it's at least 10 million, but I don't know my guess is it's way over 10 million at this point.
well, and then our investment has been land.
So we talked about this, so we gave them the land, which didn't cost us anything to get, but we did give them the land. We had 200,000-ish in the demolition. We've given a tax abatement.
For 10 years?
For 10 years.
Typical 10,
Typical
90,
10.
80, 70, okay.
Yep, typical 10-year tax abatement. And yeah, that's what our contribution so far. So out of pocket, we're 200,000. I can tell you that similar projects, every project's a little bit different, but just the one prior to this, we probably contributed cash-wise about 100,000 more than what we did for this project. And they got a tax abatement too, but cash-wise, we contributed, I think, around 300,000 for that project. And there were some things on the back end, we ended up contributing a little bit more money because they ran into some issues too with a lift station that we contributed buying the pumps for. So I think so you might remember, I think we paid like 15,000 for some pumps for that project too.
So with regards to my conclusion, I feel like we should support this request. At what level? We could certainly offer to pay half of it and match them, or we could suggest we pay it all. But my thought is, with the potential for down the road, it might be good to set a precedent and maybe just agree to assist them with 50% of the cost. I'm just throwing that out.
What if, when you're saying that, what if we would look at doing the 41 that's basically the materials and equipment and everything, and then the part that's kind of open, the testing every year after, and we don't know what that would be, not do that part of it, but do the hard fact that we know that would get them in a position where they could rent it out and, start leasing the buildings.
Yeah.
And that way you're doing part of it, but you're not doing the
Well,
uncertain
and they may
opening.
save some on the testing too, right? It might be cheaper because Just depends on how
10,000 of
much
this
it-
is contingency.
Yeah, so they may
Yeah.
not end up with it.
Yeah.
So I would
Yeah.
say that would be a reasonable way to address this would be to say, we'll pay to put the vents in the building. Costs that you weren't prepared to pay.
Bill, I think that's a great suggestion.
At least that way it's a given, we know what it is.
Yep.
Do you need a
Tangible.
decision on this today, or is this just?
I
information?
don't need, we can either go forward with, if everybody's comfortable, we can go forward with that. If you want more time to think about it, you can do that too. I mean, obviously, they have to do it regardless, and they've got to do it now regardless.
So do they have to do it, or, I mean, I read it like it's a recommendation, that they're kind of hesitant to recommend it, but if you were to do additional, they would say sample, throw in some inline fans and do this and do that, versus this is what we tell you have to do. So I guess I'm trying to understand, I know I don't have any in this besides conversation. Is it not passing occupancy based upon, is that what you're saying, is it's not currently passing occupancy because of radon levels or VOC levels?
Yeah, so what, according to them, and this being the environmental
To who?
people,
Don't,
the environmental,
The SES or the IDEM?
both. IDEM was in the conversations with SES when we had the meeting, and they're basically saying, this is your solution, do it.
Okay.
Yeah,
They
I
just
under-
didn't say that in their letter. They
Well, and
did
I
more of
think
a
SES
recommendation.
is, right, SES is the, here's a solution,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, because they recommend, I mean, IDEM recommended that you follow our guidelines if you do the sampling system.
Yeah.
And then they kind of go into, reporting and et cetera on that, so I was kind of curious about that.
I mean, I can go back, but in the meeting with them, there was no, oh, you can do it if you want. It was, here's what you need to do
in order to occupy.
in order to occupy.
Understood.
And ironically, the amount that Bill is suggesting is the amount that we have available to us. We have just about that amount of money available to us in that fund.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's about all we could do to stay within that TIF fund.
Yeah, we don't have a lot of money within that TIF fund, so we'll probably have to combine that money with some money from redevelopment general, but we can pay the $41,611 to do that. I mean, I'll be happy to go back with them, Brad, because I mean, I was in the meeting and there was no, do it if you want, but I'll be happy to go back and say, hey, before we pay this, you're saying this has to be done.
Right.
Because I agree with what you're saying.
Because the
but
way I
that
read it,
meeting-
yeah.
That meeting was not that. It was like, here's your solution.
Well,
Get it
I've also
done.
seen the state say one thing in person, and then documentation's totally different.
Totally different, yeah.
So-
So I'll be more than happy before we actually pay out is to basically go back to item and say, you're saying this has to be done.
And that will get them
And I can,
occupancy.
yeah, and I'll make sure I get. an
Jeremy, is
email.
everything on hold until,
Well, they're
we
gonna
make-
do it regardless, because they're moving forward, they're moving forward to occupancy. They're gonna pay to have it done regardless of what we do here.
okay.
If we approve it today, obviously it'll make them feel better because they're already gotta pay for it, but, if we do nothing, they're still gonna do it. They got this on Thursday last week, I doubt it,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
Like, as soon as they got it, I wanted to get in front of you because I
Sure.
know that they're already,
Wouldn't you say so? The fact that they're going ahead with it is pretty strong evidence that IDEM is forcing the issue.
yeah, I don't know that they would pay for it either, but
Or they feel it's a liability thing they need to make sure
it
they
could
cover.
be a liability.
Right.
Yeah, I have no
No-
issue
no
going
matter
back
what, yeah.
to Lori, because I'm gonna talk to her next week, I'll just ask her and I think from our perspective, we say we're commit to paying for the actual installation, the $41,611, and then I'll just check with the state to make sure this is something that they're saying should be done.
Yeah.
Should we commit to an amount, or should we commit to, once they put it in, they get an invoice, they present you with an invoice, and that's what we'll pay?
Yeah, I would.
Could be less,
No,
might be a
no.
little more.
Yeah,
Not to
you're
exceed.
absolutely right. What I'm gonna
Make
tell
that a
them.
not to exceed.
What I'm gonna tell SES is they're just gonna send me the invoice from SCS, and we'll pay that invoice.
Okay.
Yeah.
So do we think this is worth doing?
Absolutely.
I think it's a good faith, I mean, we invited them to come and build on this site
Okay,
and committed to partnering with them to clean the site, which a lot of that we left up to the EPA, but nonetheless,
and the other thing I find on the affirmative or attractive, if you will, is we don't really have a whole lot in the project anyway.
I wouldn't say that. We've made a lot of commitments, but every project's a little different. And it just so
But
happens.
200,000 compared to 10 million is,
Yes. Yeah. I mean, yeah, from our, I mean, we have a lot of tax dollars and, but, yeah, I mean, in terms of their investment, yes, they've made a significant investment in this project.
I'd make a motion to approve the amount not, do you want to make a not to exceed amount or just?
I would
the-
just say
The amount to
To pay for
install
the
venting
installation of the
system?
venting
the amount
system.
invoiced.
Yeah.
All right, so moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, all right. Any further discussion? Mayor, do you have any input or no?
No, I just appreciate you looking
Okay.
in their direction, back to Jeremy's comment.
Okay.
This was an uphill site to begin with, and
Okay,
I think it's the right thing to do. Appreciate that.
okay, motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes, or the proposal passes, however you want to word it.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Good discussion. Other business, there is none, so I'll move on to approval of claims. There are quite a few.
We have a few claims. NIPSCO 14126 is for the Marsh Building. Indiana American Water 47788 is for the Marsh Building. Our monthly lease agreement with West Hill in the amount of $42,000. Region $750. That is our fee for the bond issues. DLZ 5,665.01 is for professional services for the airport park. Quill 9885 is just for office supplies for my department. Westler 1,526.25 is for engineering services associated with probably either 200 South or for the lift stations. Emmons Engineering, $2,565 is for Petro Drive Engineering. The Environmental Management Specialist, Inc., $3,438.95 is for removal of that asbestos pipe for the 2525 project. And then Times Union 7068 was for advertisements for resolutions, I believe. Oh, sorry, for the 2525. That advertisement is associated with a certain type of housing voucher, but that had to be publicly advertised.
Are there any questions on the claims?
Make a motion to approve the claims as presented.
I'll second that. Any further discussion? All those in favor of approving these claims, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Nope. Okay, Jeremy. Okay, it says adjournment. I see people in the audience. Thank you for coming. Anyone have anything you want to say? Okay. All right, thanks for coming. Jeremy, do you have anything?
No, we just keep moving forward with our projects, and we're getting real close to the GACI bond issue, which will be done first week of March. We've got our bonds rating call tomorrow, so all the fun continues.
Okay, Mayor, do you have anything you want to enlighten us
No,
about?
thank you. Just thanks for all that you
Okay.
do.
All right. I'll declare this meeting adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
It was quick and painless.
Very good. It sounds like you have some insight on that type of environmental issue.
Oh, we run into